In the haze of neon lights, cheap whiskey fumes, and the rattle of country songs on a jukebox, a bar in the small town of Anaconda, Montana, became the stage for a story that would spiral into one of the most chilling manhunts the state had ever witnessed. What began as a night of laughter, drinks, and casual banter in a roadside tavern ended in the deafening crack of gunfire, blood on the floorboards, and the whisper of a name that would strike fear into everyone who heard it. This is not just another barroom brawl gone wrong. This is a story of anger turned deadly, of a community gripped by terror, and of a manhunt through the wilderness where every shadow looked like the gunman and every sound was a threat. This is the story of the Anaconda shooting. The night was ordinary, or at least it appeared that way. Friday evening in Anaconda was predictable. Locals gathering at the Silver Dollar Saloon, ordering rounds of beer, swapping stories about logging work, mining shifts, and the endless Montana winters. Among the crowd was a man named Walter Kane, broad-shouldered, quiet, with a stare that could unsettle even the most confident drinker. He wasn't a stranger. People knew him, sometimes as a friend, sometimes as trouble. That night, Walter had been drinking harder than usual, his jaw tight, his words sharp. Some said he had debts, others whispered about a failed relationship. But nobody realized just how close that powder keg was to igniting. Close to midnight, a card game turned heated. A few slammed fists, raised voices, laughter trying to smooth over the tension. But then came the spark. Walter accused another patron, John Mercer, of cheating. Mercer, a wiry man with a sharp tongue, fired back. Words turned into shoves. And then, in an instant that nobody could fully process, Walter drew a revolver from his jacket. The jukebox's twanged guitar was drowned out by the thunder of gunfire. A shot tore through the bar's smoke-filled air, striking Mercer in the chest. Chairs toppled, glass shattered, and screams pierced the chaos. Mercer collapsed, blood seeping across the warped wooden floor. The saloon became a storm of panic. People scrambled for the exits, some diving beneath tables, others frozen in shock. But Walter didn't run, not immediately. Witnesses say he stood over Mercer's body, breathing heavy, eyes wild, like a man caught between rage and regret. Then, as if remembering where he was, he bolted. Out the back door, into the Montana night, leaving behind the smell of gunpowder and a town forever changed. By the time sheriff's deputies arrived, Walter Kane had vanished. Mercer was dead. And the people of Anaconda whispered the same question into the cold air. Where did he go? The manhunt began at dawn. Officers spread across town, checking every barn, every shed, every abandoned mine shaft. But Kane seemed to move like a ghost. Witnesses reported seeing him on the outskirts, moving quickly, always one step ahead. Bloodhounds caught his scent near Warm Springs Creek, but lost it in the icy current. The sheriff, grizzled and sharp-eyed, knew this wasn't just a fugitive. This was a man who understood the land, who could vanish into forests and mountains as easily as most men walk down a street. For days, the manhunt stretched across Montana. Lawmen rode on horseback through thick pine woods, rifles slung over their shoulders, scanning every ridge for movement. Volunteers joined in, their shotguns and lanterns creating a line of fire through the dark. But with each night that passed, Walter grew into a legend, part man, part phantom. Stories spread. He had been seen stealing food from a farmhouse. He'd slipped into a barn to sleep, leaving behind only muddy boot prints. Some said he crossed the mountains into Deer Lodge County. Others swore he was hiding in plain sight, disguised, walking among the very people searching for him. Fear poisoned the town. Bars that once rang with laughter now closed early. Parents barred their doors, keeping children away from windows after dark. Every creak of a floorboard, every knock at the door sent shivers down spines. The people of Anaconda weren't just mourning Mercer. They were waiting, terrified, for Walter Kane to come back. But what made him dangerous wasn't just the gun in his hand. It was his silence. Walter left no manifesto, no explanation. No one knew if he killed Mercer out of jealousy, anger, or madness. That void of motive turned him into a monster of imagination. The less people knew, the more they feared. Then came the break. A rancher, driving his cattle near the base of the Pintler Mountains, noticed movement in a copse of trees. At first, he thought it was a bear, but the figure was too deliberate, too cautious. He alerted the sheriff, and soon a posse of lawmen surrounded the area. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, they had him cornered. But Walter Kane wasn't going quietly. When the deputies closed in, gunfire exploded through the trees. Bullets ripped through branches, echoing across the valley. The manhunt became a battle. Walter, desperate and cornered, fought with the fury of someone who knew this was the endgame. For hours the standoff raged. Officers crouched behind rocks, Walter moving like a shadow between trees, firing and retreating. As the sun dipped, casting long shadows across the forest, the standoff reached its peak. A deputy's lantern flickered, and in that brief light, Walter's figure appeared, revolver raised. A single shot rang out. Walter staggered, collapsed against a tree, and slid to the ground. The man who had haunted Anaconda was finally still. The news spread fast. People poured into the streets, not in celebration, but in a stunned quiet. It was over. The manhunt that had consumed their nights, their whispers, their fears, had ended in a pool of blood beneath the pines. Yet questions remained. Why had Walter pulled that gun in the saloon? Why did he fight so fiercely to avoid capture rather than surrender? Some said he couldn't live with the shame. Others believed he had long planned to go out in a blaze of gunfire. What no one doubted was that his rampage had left scars on Anaconda that would never fully heal. The Silver Dollar Saloon reopened eventually. Fresh boards covered the bullet holes. The jukebox played again. But those who had been there that night never forgot the sound of gunfire over laughter, the way one man's rage could shatter the peace of an entire town. And when the wind howled through the Montana pines, people swore it carried with it the ghost of Walter Kane, the gunman of Anaconda, whose shadow loomed long after his death. Crime stories often fade into history, buried beneath newer scandals and fresher headlines. But in small towns like Anaconda, memory lingers. Every time a drink is poured, every time cards are shuffled in a smoky room, someone remembers that night. The Barroom Bloodshed, the shooting that sparked a manhunt, the tale of a man who became a monster and a community forced to face the darkness that walked among them. And perhaps that's what makes stories like this endure. Not just the crime, not just the chase, but the way they transform ordinary people into reluctant witnesses of history. Because in that moment, under the neon glow of a Montana bar, everyone in the Silver Dollar Saloon learned the same chilling truth. Sometimes, the most dangerous predators are not in the wild, but standing right beside you, drink in hand, smile on their lips, waiting for the moment when the mask slips and the gun is drawn.